Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Monica and today I am continuing with my Oldies but Goodies series. If you haven't watched this before, I've got two previous videos which I will link in the description below on tarot decks that I consider Oldies but Goodies. So the previous two videos focused on decks that were great for beginners. Aside from that, the criteria was that these are decks that have been in print for quite some time, often a decade or even longer, and they are mainstream, they're still in print, therefore they are relatively affordable compared to other independent publications or those that get funded through Kickstarter, and they are not the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And after I did the last video on the series, I thought to myself that it would be nice to do the next step, which is looking at decks that are great for intermediate readers. So those readers that have worked with the Rider-Waite-Smith and have an understanding of the tarot, they've studied the Rider-Waite-Smith system, they understand it, they've worked with it for a while, and they would like to explore, what else is there. So these are the next sort of decks that I thought would make great reading decks that are accessible for what I call intermediate readers. And intermediate, I just mean, as I mentioned, those of us who've worked with the Rider-Waite-Smith, we've studied it and we understand it, and there we can branch out from there. So just a few disclaimers before I start. All the prices that I quote are in Australian dollars and they are valid or current as it May 2023 when this video is being filmed. I should also point out that of course I haven't bought every single deck out there. So these 6 tarot decks that I'm going to showcase and share with you in this video are just the ones from my collection, and there can be many others out there that fit this criteria. So to begin, the very first deck I want to share is the Connolly Tarot. If you're not familiar with Peter Paul Connolly and Eileen Connolly, but you think they sound familiar, that's because they also did the Feng Shui Tarot. That's another one of their creations. Now the Connolly Tarot is by US Game Systems, as you can see, and it was published, here we go, 1989 and then 2006. I don't know if you can see that. So it's been around for well over a decade. I mean, 1989 is is a long time ago. And now you could almost put this in a beginner's category, but I didn't do that for a reason. And that's because some of the cards in this deck, I think, if you haven't studied with the Rider-Waite system, and if this was your first tarot deck that you bought, they might be a bit confusing or tricky to put into context. So these are the card backs, and I'll just first of all show you some of the cards that make this a great intermediate deck in my opinion. So it does keep with the Rider-Waite system tradition. That's the 9 of Cups. And most of the cards in this deck, I would say easily, at least 80% of them, you can see where they're coming from the Rider-Waite-Smith. That's the 6 of Cups, Justice. It's uncluttered. It's keeps with, for the most part, the Rider-Waite-Smith system. The color choice, I really prefer it. I really like the way that the characters are drawn and articulated, and I think it's an uncluttered deck. It's nicely structured. Again, they're like everyday scenes with a sort of a more medieval historical feel to them, but overall you can see where this deck relates to the Rider-Waite-Smith and where it sort of stems from. And it's just painted and colored in line with the artist's own unique style. Okay. But some of the cards, like I thought, might be a bit tricky for a beginner. Like if you've never seen the Rider-Waite-Smith system and you got this deck out, for example, here is the Six of Wands. And it's not that clear that this is a card of victory and success. I mean, you might be looking at this person and trying to figure out what are they doing. And it's only until you sort of might see these sort of details like the wreath up here that you might go, oh yeah, that's, you know, a symbol of victory. So you might associate this with victory, but not necessarily so. And some of the other cards that I have, that's the Eight of Swords. So that's self-explanatory, you know, someone stuck behind a window, perhaps, or perhaps they're just choosing to be inside. You know, they're choosing to be there because it's nice and it's cold out here and it's warm inside. So it's not, yeah, you can sort of interpret this in different ways, basically. And some of the other cards that I have, that I actually went through and pulled them out to demonstrate what I mean, are the Ten of Swords. So, you know, if you're like a pure beginner, you wouldn't get, well, I personally wouldn't get the idea of, you know, a difficult and painful ending from this, right? The Judgment card is very interesting. If you think about your normal or traditional judgment interpretation and depiction, this is very, very different to me. This is like almost like a family scene, and maybe they're just, you know, had a disagreement about something mundane. I don't know. The Five of Wands, very reminiscent to me to the Six of Swords. The Two of Swords, it's a bit different to, you know, you've got the Two of Swords with the person covering their eyes and trying to look inside. This is, to me, yeah, it's a scene between two people. There's a relational quality to it between two individuals. Five of Pentacles. I think this threw me off a little bit because of the blindfold, right? So yeah, you can sort of go into the image and sort of think about the fact that there's a higher power helping this person to see or guiding them, but I can't tell that this person is in material difficulty necessarily, other than that they can't see. And it's not that I'm criticizing the artist, it's just that this is the reason why I've chosen this for an intermediate deck, okay, and not really a beginner deck as such. The Nine of Swords, okay, it's winter and it's cold, but this character here looks pretty good. They don't seem too unhappy about their situation. They seem okay with it. You know, they're carrying some swords. It might be difficult, but yeah, you know. Seven of Swords. Now this, the Seven of Swords, this reminds me very much of the Druidcraft Seven of Swords and the idea of figuring something out, learning something, you know, trying to understand something. That's what, when I see the Seven of Swords here, that's what I think of. So anyway, I do think this is a great reading deck. I have no problem with this deck as a reading deck as such. And I don't fault the artists in any way, but I'm just saying, you know, those are the reasons why I haven't chosen this for a beginner's deck. This is certainly still in print, and you can get this online here in Australia from sites like Booktopia for around $37, but cheaper on Amazon and even cheaper on secondhand Facebook pages. Up next we have the brilliant Housewives Tarot. To me, this tarot deck, yeah, it's a really nice work of art in my opinion. It comes in this great little sturdy box, and inside the deck sits right in here, and it's got these sort of, you know, it's like a recipe box, like those old school 1950s, 60s recipe boxes with an instruction booklet and everything. Yes, this is still in print. You can get it for around, you know, anything between $30 to $40 online. Again, secondhand, you might be able to get it even cheaper than that. And I think this is a brilliantly well executed tarot deck. So it's by Paul Kepler and Jude Buffum. Buffum. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, I'm sorry. It's a domestic divination kit with deck and instruction book. So it takes its name from, I guess, the housewife culture of the 1950s, 1940s, 50s, and I think 60s even. Love the card backs. Like, this is what I mean. It is just, from a design point of view, this deck is absolutely brilliant and so nicely done. So, and I love the cardstock. It's like matte. It's yeah, it's a really, really, really lovely cardstock. And there's loads of cocktails, loads of martinis, and house chores essentially in it. But they've taken images, I think, from magazines or advertisements of the era and put them together in a really nicely stylized collage. I cannot fault this tarot deck in terms of how well it is put together. So here we, and you can relate to the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition in it, okay? So the 5 of Cups. I'm just going to hold this like so. And yeah, the suits are colored, so you can tell straight away what suit it is, but it's fairly self-explanatory. You know, the 5 of Wands, lots of cleaning going on, lots of action, lots of activities, very similar to your Rider-Waite-Smith 5 of Wands, except that it's just one person instead of 5. But you get the idea that there's just all these different tasks to do, and this person's going to be busy. The magician, you know, the salesman, selling you a nice shiny gadget that will solve all your household woes. Ace of Wands. And on we go. The core cards are excellent. Don't know how they found these images, but they're just absolutely brilliant. 2 of Wands, having to make a decision in this interpretation, or not, and not looking too happy about it. So yeah, we've got a very, very easy to read and to relate to tarot deck. Well, at least in terms of the, the household chores, I think. And it's a great working deck. It's a great reading deck. I've used this numerous times and I pull out regularly, and it's absolutely fantastic. But I wouldn't recommend this to a beginner, because there are, once again, cards that are they're just in the artist's own interpretation that might be not as obvious and deviate slightly from the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition. So some examples that I have are this 8 of Cups. Okay, if you think about the 8 of Cups in the Rider-Waite-Smith and the person walking away from something or going to reach something higher, this is a bit different to that. The 7 of Swords. I guess there's the idea of gossip and backstabbing a little bit in there, which it does come up with the 7 of Swords traditionally, but to me the 7 of Swords is much more than that. And again, I don't fault the artists at all. I really love working with this tarot deck, and it's a brilliant working deck. It's just these are the reasons I wouldn't recommend it to beginners. Okay, Judgment, the 6 of Pentacles, 6 of Cups. So these are all cards that are quite different from their respective Rider-Waite-Smith cards, and I just think that if you're a beginner and you look at a card like the 6 of Cups, you would interpret it quite differently. And you know, that is the beauty of working with decks like these now and then and pulling them out, is that they flex my intuitive muscle, and that I can't just rely on the Rider-Waite-Smith, you know, memorization. They give me a completely different flavor and understanding, and that's fantastic. I love it. But again, it's more of an intermediate deck to me, and it's absolutely a fantastic working deck. I highly recommend this. I've seen that this was actually printed in, I wonder if I have it in here. No, I think it was 2004, and honestly, I'm not sure what will happen once it runs out. I mean, it's US Games, so I suppose they could always reprint it, but sometimes even these mass market decks, they'll go out of print and you'll never see them again. And I wonder if this will be one of those. So I mean, I love it, so I'm going to keep my copy anyway. Third on the list is the new Mythic Tarot, which comes in this giant box with an excellent guidebook. And I highly rate this tarot deck. I mean, I rate it very, very highly. I have the latest edition, or the second version, then it's called the New Mythic as opposed to just the Mythic Tarot, because preceding this print was the original Mythic Tarot, and the cards are slightly different in that, like, it's the same picture, but I think this version has been sort of airbrushed on the computer, and I actually prefer this one. I know a lot of people don't, but I really do. It's mass market, it is still in print. You can find this for around the $40 mark or under online. A lot cheaper if you buy it secondhand. This version has matte cardstock, so I really appreciate it because of that. And I'll just say that yes, it does keep in line with the Rider-Waite-Smith system. However, it does so through mythic myths, traditional myths, and they are Greek myths. So for example, you know, the cups suit, the whole of the cups suit is the tale of Eros and Psyche, okay? And so there's a progression through the cups as the story of Eros and Psyche progresses, with the relevant lessons for each card. The same with like the sort of the Ten of Wands, you know, this is the story of Jason and the Golden Fleece, and so the whole of the Wands suit talks about that story, and each card is interpreted at different stages in that story. And I would not recommend this to a beginner because it's just layered with the Greek mythology, and I feel like it's quite heavy. Like it's just too much to learn, because you're trying to learn a system like the Rider-Waite-Smith system, but then on top of that you've got the Greek mythology that's overlaid into it, and I think it's just too much. But if you do know the Rider-Waite-Smith system and then you start working with this deck, this is a fantastic reading deck. I can't rate it enough. I mean, I suppose I am biased because I am a lover of Greek mythology and Greek myths, and I think my ancestry is heavily rooted in that, in a sense. So yeah, okay, I am biased, no doubt about it. But at the same time, it's a fantastic deck because each card is just like a story picture, and you don't get a lot of like symbolism and, you know, too much detail. Okay, so yeah, I appreciate how well it is executed in terms of keeping things uncluttered and keeping in line with the Greek mythology. It has an excellent guidebook. If you get this deck, you have to get the guidebook. Yeah, no, you do have to get the guidebook. I know there are no rules in a sense with tarot, but at the same time, I would say your life would be so much richer. And the guidebook is written by Julia Sherman-Burke and Liz Green, and they're both therapists of considerable reputation. And so there's a lot of that wisdom infused in the guidebook. And yeah, I found it immensely helpful, and it's even now I'll look through some of the cards and read what they write up on it and go, oh my gosh, there's like so much in that that I understand and I really love. So anyway, this is the New Mythic Tarot by Julia Sherman-Burke and Liz Green. It is illustrated by Giovanni Caselli. So yeah, I think the illustrator has done a brilliant job. Yeah, it's really beautifully done, in my opinion anyway. And it's a great intermediate reading deck. The fourth deck is the Cosmic Tarot by Norbert Losch. Oh gosh, I'm really terrible with names, but sorry about that. Anyway, this is an AGM A.G. Mueller publication. And look, I've even got the sticker. I bought this a long time ago for $35 from the good old Theosophical bookshop in Melbourne, back in the day when they actually had a great bookshop. My understanding is things have changed, but I could be wrong anyway. So this is a Thoth based deck, and in saying that, I do think that it's a fantastic working deck. The card backs are, you know, keeping in line with the cosmic theme, I suppose. I found this to be surprisingly a great reading deck, and I say surprisingly because you'll see from the cards they can be a bit too, you know, mystical in some sense. So you do get, you know, here's the glyph of Jupiter right on this person's singlet. This is the Six of Wands. It's a card of victory. So they've got a wreath on, and we've got the lion, you know, the regal, you know, king of the jungle being on top. There's a lot of symbolism here, and then you add sort of the astrology on top of it, and I think that there's quite a bit of detail in that in these cards, but nonetheless I found this to be a great reading deck. It is still in print. You can get this for around $40 mark online, and a lot cheaper I think on Facebook as second hand. But a lot of the cards are also very relatable to the Rider-Waite-Smith system as well. This is the Three of Pentacles. You know, of course, there are many overlaps between Thoth and Rider-Waite-Smith. The Chariot. So you can certainly relate to this. I would just not consider this a beginner's deck necessarily, because yeah, I think that there might just be a bit too much detail in some of the cards, and people might get a bit lost or diverge a bit more from the core meaning of the card. But that's just me, you know. There might be beginners out there who might work with this really well. I'm not sure. Now, one thing I've got to say with this deck is the core cards. Some of them really look like some sort of 70s and 80s and 90s sort of movie Hollywood era characters. I'm not sure if that's just me, but that's just what I'm getting from it. And in spite of all of that, I mean, look at that. Isn't that like a scene from like a Hollywood movie? Is it just me thinking that? Does anybody else work with this tarot deck and sort of... It's just the flavor I'm getting from it. And I don't mind at all. Like, I think it's fantastic. And some of the cards are quite gory and scary. Like this Nine of Swords with this person getting, you know, like really stabbed by the swords. I find some of the cards a bit... yeah, a bit challenging in that sense. And then also like with the Four of Cups, to me the character here looks quite content. They look pretty happy, and they're just sort of in a bit of a daydream a little bit. So it doesn't, to me this doesn't look like a card of discontent, you know. So again, a beginner might think that this is actually a positive thing. And of course, look, when you're reading for someone, you're not gonna go, oh, the Rider-Waite-Smith system says this, so, you know, this image doesn't apply. Of course, you're going to go with the image. But in terms of trying to understand the tarot, I'm a person that always recommends start with the Rider-Waite-Smith, understand that base really well, get your foundation right, and then you can branch onto decks like this one. So, yeah, here's another one. So, no doubt that this is dealing with pentacles in the material realm, but I think, have I seen this guy somewhere in a movie or something? Have I don't know. Maybe it's just me. So yeah, so this is the Cosmic Tarot, which you can still find in print, and it's a very interesting tarot deck. You can spend a lot of time with it and uncover many layers as you work with it. And it is, as I said, a Thoth-based system. So, like, that's evident, for example, in the Eight of Cups. You know, it's to me, this is a scene of sorrow and pain and, you know, being desolate and just, yeah, unhappy. Whereas that's not how I often attribute the Eight of Cups. But of course, in a reading, that's what you're gonna go with, right? So anyway, So yeah, this is the Cosmic Tarot, published by A.G. Miller. Second to last is the Silver Era Tarot. This is a publication by Anya Khan, with the author writing the booklet for it, Russell J. Moon. And it comes in a nice little box. Okay, quite sturdy, magnetic clip, so I really like that everything is in here. Once it shuts, it's securely held inside. And now, still in print, it's been published quite a while back. It's a Schiffer publication, and it was published in 2010. Okay, 2010, back in the good old days when a tarot deck was $24.99 US, mind you. So this is so well in line with the Rider-Waite-Smith system. I could almost put it as a deck for beginners, but I didn't, because I just feel like people understand and work better as a beginner with the Rider-Waite-Smith. Okay, that's what basically it all comes down to. These are the card backs, and I will say straight off that one thing that puts some people off this deck, not me, is the thickness of the cards. This is a very thick deck, right? That's the thickness there. I don't mind that, but I know some people find that unbearable and they just can't work with it because of that. So yeah, it is, I find it a great deck, and it is a black and white, or predominantly black and white. You'll have small touches of color, like for example here in the Lover's card. In each card there's a little bit of color somewhere. It might not be evident. So this is the Four of Pentacles, and the colors is sort of like a darker blue. Let me bring this up. In the protagonist, that pentacle that they're holding up. I might have to do an up close walkthrough, a little bit of walkthrough with these cards so you can see what I mean. And straight away you can tell this is Rider-Waite-Smith to a T. But I just felt like still there are some cards that might throw beginners off, and I think that the overall mood of the deck, I reserve this deck more for personal readings for me, and readings that work with what some people call shadow work or childhood issues as well. You know, some darker, deeper stuff, because the artist herself writes about her turbulent childhood, and that being a something that helped her or propelled her to create this tarot deck, and has influenced the creation of this tarot deck. And I guess I've always associated it with more of a sort of like a therapy, sort of like a personal working deck in that sense. But I've got to say, it is so well done and so nicely keeping with the Rider-Waite-Smith that yeah, she's done an excellent job in my opinion. She's done all the photography and the sets and everything, you know, like she's been the vision and the creative like fire for this tarot deck herself. So here in the King of Wands, I don't know if you can see that there's a bit of a darker blue in the King's coat. And the Six of Cups, it might be a bit more evident, but the you know, the color is in the bouquets. So there's 1, 2, and 3 that have a red or a purple, pink, sort of a tinge color to them. But again, this is the Six of Cups, right? Connection with someone from the past. And on it goes. Six of Pentacles. Yeah, I really have a lot of time for this tarot deck. As I said, I've used it more on a personal level rather than for reading for other people, because of how I associate this tarot deck for me and how I work with it. But nonetheless, it is a great reading deck, and I do hold it in high regard. And last but not least, the Deviant Moon Tarot by Patrick Valenza. This is a US Games publication. Now, this has had other reprints done. Like there's a borderless edition you can now get for around the $35 mark or so, and I wouldn't recommend this for beginners. You'll see why when you look at the cards, but nonetheless it's a brilliant working deck, and it's done in a style that, like, it's truly original and unique among so many tarot decks out there, and it really blew my mind when I obtained it. So one thing I will say, and that really bothers me with this version, is, so I've got the older version before the borderless one, is that it is the heavy laminate type. You can see the, I don't know if you can see the shine on it when in the light sometimes. There we go. It's just, whoa. Yeah, heavy laminate. The feeling of plastic is so off-putting to me, but anyway, I'm not gonna go on about that because I do it every single video I make just about. So yeah, I think Patrick's done an amazing job with this deck. It is quirky, it's offbeat, it's odd, it's unusual. It's, gosh, a mix of fantasy and, you know, punk and oh, there's just so much in it. It's a Rider-Waite Smith based deck, but as you can tell, because the images are quite unique, I guess, in a sense, and unusual, and sometimes a bit scary or just bizarre, even though you can pick the Rider-Waite Smith flavor in it, yeah, I'd really reserve this for an intermediate level where you want to try something different, and this certainly is something different, no doubt about it. So as a reading deck, this does work incredibly well. It is great even for clients, provided that, you know, they're open to some of these images, because not everyone is, not everybody likes this style of art, I guess. You know, of course it's so subjective, right? But I think that this is a great reading deck, and the fact that it's still in print and it's so affordable, I think it's fantastic. And my only issue with it is that it's so plastic, and I'm actually thinking about getting the borderless edition to see whether that's any better in terms of cardstock. So that's it. That wraps up my 6 intermediate decks that are oldies but goodies. I actually think this one was published in, let me have a look, I can't tell. 2008. There it is. This was published in 2008, so, you know, well over a decade now. Yeah, all these decks have been around for a long time, and I think that they've held their value as reading decks, and they are still easy to access, to find, and very affordable compared to some of their, you know, indie publications out there. And especially, you know, I still see these decks come up secondhand for around the $20–25 mark here in Australia, which is very reasonably priced. So I'm going to wrap it up now, and as always, thank you everyone for joining me, thank you for watching, and thank you for supporting my channel. Until my next video, take care.